home county based? Because I've been hearing that most of these companies that are coming in and putting in these dispensaries and farms in the United States are coming out of Canada.
Yeah, so I live in Ohio State, in Cleveland right now. Hopefully, I shouldn't say this on record, but if I can convince my wife, I would love to move out here and live in this community and be out here soon. But that's where we're based out of, is Cleveland.
Your company is, or just you?
Well, I mean, the headquarters is the facility we're building right now in the corporate park, but right now I don't have an office space there yet. So that's where we're from. We have consultants and advisors from the best of the horticultural industry, security, medical, and a number of different verticals.
Okay, whatever. If you don't get this and the company that's coming in the other side of Sandusky comes in, will your greenhouse be selling your marijuana to them once it's been processed? Or you're just selling to a processor?
It could be both. There's a plant-only processor license the Department of Commerce has developed to be able to put the flower product on shelf directly to dispensaries or to be sent through processing licenses, whether that would be co-located if we are awarded a processing license for the corporate park business or through third-party processors elsewhere. But until we know where those licenses all land geographically, it's not our distribution plan and our relationships with dispensaries hasn't been established until we know where those fall.
I understand this building's just sitting there empty, and no empty building looks good. But why not build a building south of your planning facility so your traffic that can be 300 to 350 patients a day is not north of Route 2, all mixed in with Cedar Point traffic, which is enough to deal with in the summertime. Why not send them south of here? You just have to be another half mile down the road.
Yeah, so I mean, we're really excited about the opportunity to be at Burger King Center to renovate that building. I'm not sure exactly what parcel you're referring to. We did do comprehensive real estate searches and market demographics to understand kind of where patient count might be as to what pharmacy developing in those dispensary districts. I'm happy to get into more detail on that offline if there's specific things that you're interested in.
If this is the wave of the future, we're all forward thinking, why not build an addition to an existing hospital in the county instead of having it remotely? Why not make it part of the hospital where medicine is dispensed and medical advisory is dispensed instead of somewhere remote? Why not make it part of the medical system?
If you know folks at the hospital that are interested in that, we'd be happy to have that discussion on the assumptions that they haven't put in dispensary license applications, so there might be a limitation as to the availability of that with the current program, the way it's structured for 60 licenses total.
So you haven't approached any, your company hasn't approached any hospitals themselves?
Well, I mean, we have doctors that are on our advisory board and that are involved in the process, but we do not have a hospital right now that is willing to attach a dispensary to the hospital facility for a few different reasons.
So what happens when, my problem with medical marijuana, I don't have a problem with medical marijuana. My problem is, it seems that once it's in a state, recreational marijuana just follows. So what happens when it becomes recreational marijuana in Ohio? What happens to your facility then? Do we lose a lot of customers because they can go somewhere else and get it? Or do you just open your doors to everyone who wants it?
Right, so again, recreational marijuana is not legal in Ohio, it's not legal in Huron. I hope that it'll become clear that we put a substantial investment into the pharmaceutical orientation of this business and the medical orientation of this business, that really is our business plan, the patient interaction, the patient care plan that we have. We see a substantial addressable market in the medical side of this business, so that there's kind of this natural tendency to make the assumption that none of any of this is real and that we're all just, it's a wink and nod for recreational, but I can tell you that's not my perspective, that's not why I became interested in this industry and why I started working with businesses.
Well, what happens if it happens? I mean, let's just say, oh, it's all legal now, what happens to your facility?
Yeah,
You just make an addition?
I appreciate your
I didn't think we were going to be able to ask questions. I wasn't in here at the beginning. I apologize for that. And I also want to say God bless anybody sitting here for health issues. I know that's a big concern, and looking for answers and going through tough times on that. The arthritis.
Excuse me,
Yes.
your name and address.
Steve Fisher, Huron. Arthritis, Jeff. I got arthritis in our family too. Jeff, when we were in a meeting, my wife and I, you said you were moving to Huron. Now I just heard you say, well, if I get my wife to say we're moving to Huron, you're coming to Huron. Sales, smooth. Sounds like a lot. Man, when I was listening to the beginning, they got every answer in the book, it sounds like. You got hemorrhoids in there? Hemorrhoids in there? Sounds like the old medicine doctor used to come around in the horse and buggy in different times. Got all kinds of answers. I got a cure for this, I have a cure for everything. Who wouldn't be here looking and help, wanting help? One thing he didn't mention, did you notice when he talked that whole process through, one thing he didn't say at all, didn't mention one word about money. Notice that? Never said one word about money. I'll bring up to all of you health care. Look at how our health care costs are going up and up and up. Never mentioned in one word about money. That PowerPoint was smooth too. You know, if I'd been sharp, I should have got a PowerPoint together and put up there job and family services, and people know what I'm talking about, a lot of you, or just bring in a bunch of people that I know, families that I know, people I know that have gone through horrible drug situations, and put them up there. I think you get the same kind of expression you got for the public. I got a couple questions. I just didn't get up here to say I do have a couple questions. You brought up, by the way, old wise, sometimes the old way is still the best way. Old wise man back there. Old wise man. California. I heard, boy, everything's running. So listen to you, it sounds like everything's running great out in California. And Colorado the same way. I hear all that research you guys done. You guys got a lot of degrees. And so a lot of these people here, I got a degree, pretty good degree, but I'll tell you what, a lot of them got real life experience. And that's tough. That's tough to buck. Real life experience. Colorado. How come, if everything's going so great in Colorado, have you done research on 70, I was 66%, now and that's legal out there. Medical and recreational marijuana is legal out there. How come 71% of the districts out there still have never voted in medical or recreational marijuana in their districts? Now, what's that tell you? After all these years of it being legal out there in Colorado, what's that tell you? California. You ever heard of green doctors? You ever heard of green doctors? Google green doctors. It'll frighten you about medical marijuana dispensaries and that kind of stuff. No answer on that. Well, what about all that research? And as far as checking everything out with the, the surveillance and that, it's amazing. It's amazing how many, all the jails and prisons around, all over, got all that surveillance, and what do they all have problems with? Drugs. Drugs inside. One of the sayings is, if you're not a criminal when you go in, you'll be one when you come out. They got all that surveillance, all the cops around. Sounds smooth, but how about real life? Opioids. Remember, it wasn't that many years ago where they were coming up saying opioids were the answer. They were the answer. Remember that? Hey, opioids are the thing. Now we got something that'll take care of everything. Sounds like. How about hemorrhoids? Okay. One more point, I'm done. What about those? What about California? Have you ever heard of green doctors? What about Colorado? How come have you done any research why so much of it still doesn't want any part of it? Any comment on that? Thank you.
Kyle, 920 Strawberry Drive.
I'm sorry, state the name again.
Kyle Ulrich, 920 Strawberry Drive. So I just want to thank you guys for having this meeting. I know this open dialogue is extremely important for issues that are this controversial. When my 5 minutes is up, just yell at me and I'll get out here. I know there's a lot of people that want to speak. Been in intensive care unit nurse for 3 years. I know the biggest issue that's surrounding this controversy right now in this area specifically is the opioid epidemic. From Sandusky to Castelia to Norwalk to Vermillion, everyone's going through it right now. It's as bad as it's ever been. We are clearly, without a doubt, losing the war on drugs. Hate to say that, but that, from what Dr. Temple showed, that's just the truth. What people, I think, fail to realize is they start associating these things like marijuana. They see that it's an illegal drug, they start associating it with heroin, with opioid narcotics. And that's just not the case. I think a lot of fear surrounds, I'm looking at the crowd tonight, and I've heard a lot of scoffs, and I've seen a lot of eye rolls. I see a lot of older generation, older Huron residents, my father's age, my grandparents' age. It's always been taboo to them. My dad and my mom raised me on you hear the word weed or pot, you stay away from it. And that's why I like how Dr. Temple wanted to refer to it as cannabis, because that's what we're referring to. We don't want this negative stigma of marijuana coming in and scaring people off from giving us a chance to help people. Didn't get the speaker's name, unfortunately. I apologize for that. Loved his presentation. A gentleman asked him what he was in this business for. Was he in this business to make a profit, or was he in here to help people's lives? I know he said he had a personal experience with his mother, I believe he said. To me, the answer is both. I mean, I can't count how many times in 3 years I've seen somebody my age come in and pass away from this epidemic and having to explain things to their families about why this happened. I've seen firsthand, however, on the opposite flip side of that coin, how much medical marijuana has benefited people in other states. I have seen people suffering from nausea, from vomiting, from rapid weight loss due to effects of chemotherapy and severe Crohn's disease, who can be treated by phentermine and Zofran. They have no effect on these people. I've taken care of, I've helped people who have systemic Crohn's disease, that just the look of food makes them want to throw up. The only treatments they have that they found to be effective was the marijuana. Some states, like this state, I've had people who do it recreationally because it's the only thing that works, and they don't have the means of getting that legally. But they get the Zofran, they get the Vicodin for their stomach pain, they get the Percocets and Dilaudid and the fentanyls. And I know there's a gentleman, I don't know if he's still in here, who just had a hip surgery. He wasn't right here in the area. Complaining that he just had to wean himself off because he was suffering from some side effects of addiction for these hard pain medicines. And I think what this gentleman right here in the red was describing earlier, he's had relative, a friend, somebody in Colorado. This isn't a means of coding or masking narcotic pain medicine. This is an adjunct therapy that is meant to help wean us off of the opioid epidemic. A lot of people are scared and they think that, you put the words weed and legalization and now it's distributed right here on our streets. People start getting scared and now all of a sudden drugs are more readily available than they were before. And the truth is that's just not the case. This is an issue of something that's going to help us, an adjunct therapy that shows that scientific evidence shows there is no physiological dependence to cannabis. It is completely different from your Percocets, your fentanyls, your heroin. So you take this as an adjunct and it treats pain, it treats nausea, it treats anxiety. There are 21, I believe it's 21 different, I have it written down, 21 approved diseases you have to have before you can even get this license. These aren't things that you can come in for a hangnail or a headache, and suddenly you're getting a medical card to go buy pot. That's not what this is. I mean, if you are suffering from debilitating rheumatoid arthritis, from debilitating Crohn's disease, from ALS where your body is shutting down, multiple sclerosis where you can't even get out of bed in the morning because your body won't let you control your bodily functions. This all means to help people improve the quality of life, and that is what this group is here to do. We are a perfect location here, because we're between Cleveland, we're between Toledo. It's a perfect route to get to where we're at to help a majority of people in a quick amount of time. And on top of improving people's quality of life, because that's what my job is, that's what I'm here and I've seen, and that's what I'm seeing these people trying to do, is improve the quality of people's lives.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
Tony Legando. How's that? For 28 years, Huron Memorial Stadium was my address. Now I live at East 7th Street, West. I'm not here to argue for or against medical marijuana. I don't know much about it. I'm here to talk about what appears to me to be a lack of transparency used in bringing it into our community. Mr. Hartung is a leader of the community. If you don't mind, I'd like to address you with my concerns. About 2 years ago, as I understand it, when the state legalized medical marijuana, you had to make a decision. Prohibit it, put a moratorium on it, or don't do anything about it, leaving the door open for growing, processing, and selling legalized marijuana. Under the direction of our city manager and the guidance of our law director, you made the decision to do nothing. Once you made that decision, you had to make another decision. Open it up for a public discussion and listen to the concerns of your constituents, or keep it quiet. Sadly, you chose to keep it quiet. Putting a moratorium on it and bringing the taxpayers into the discussion would have been a noble thing to do, but you chose not to. You never gave the people of Huron a voice until tonight, really. The opportunity to research, ask questions, or be a part of the process until tonight, until it's really too late, until it's a done deal. I'm wondering, what were you doing here tonight? It's already been decided. The moment medical marijuana became legal, if you weren't going to prohibit dispensing it in our city, you should have reevaluated the zoning of our business districts, ensuring a favorable location for everyone. Other cities have done it, but you didn't. Makes one wonder if you weren't blinded by the money, didn't care where the dispensary went, or what your constituents think. I think it's a little bit politically arrogant, just to be frank. The city manager and law director were aware of communications to buy the Burger King in September, but didn't inform all council until a work session late in October. I don't know much about politics, Mr. Mayor, but I think some of them got played. In fact, I think maybe we all got a little bit played. This is a controversial topic. Yet you never mentioned growing, processing, or dispensing legal marijuana in your meeting agendas. You never sent out surveys or questionnaire. You never wrote about it in a newsletter, sent a simple flyer, or even included it in any articles or discussions in the newspaper. We have communications about leaf pickup, but nothing about growing, processing, or selling within the city limits. Can't help it, Mr. Mayor, that just doesn't pass the smell test for me. Here's the vision I get, and I could be wrong, but it seems to me some of the council huddled together, along with the law director, and went rogue, slow playing this thing, hoping the message would be delayed long enough to seal the deal and quietly move on. I don't know, I just saw some drawings of what it's supposed to look like. I didn't know about this thing until 2 weeks ago. Somebody had to know about this a long time ago for them to draw up those pictures and all that. You didn't ask our police chief how it might affect our city. Didn't ask our judge how it might affect the courts system in our city. And you didn't ask someone like John Zimmerman, former fire chief, building official, and lifelong resident of Huron, about potential zoning problems. They work in your building every week.
but you didn't take the time to ask them. As I understand it, you didn't go to the firemen, to the police force to ask their honest opinions. These guys have families, they work hard in the city of Huron, they have opinions, they care about their community. They all work in the city building, some 4 or 5 days a week, but you didn't take the time to ask them what they thought. That's kind of wild to me. You didn't go to Pete Shea, who was here tonight, director of the Huron County Health Department, who lives in our community and has children in our schools. He has some strong opinions on topics like this, but you didn't ask him. You didn't go to Dr. Williamson. His office is in the heart of town, about 50 feet away from yours, Mr. Mayor. He's a lifetime resident. You could have asked him what he thought of a medication not yet approved by the American Medical Association or the Food and Drug Administration, but you chose not to. I could be wrong, but I believe you didn't go to them because they might tell you something you didn't want to hear. You didn't go to them because they might expose the secret that's been working behind the scenes in our community, apparently for a long time. I wonder, are you representing the city manager, law director, and a couple council members? Or are you representing all of the council and all the residents of Huron? Maybe before you started easing this apparent Trojan horse into our community, you're tripping over yourselves to grow, process, and distribute medical marijuana in our city. You should have taken a more transparent approach, one that included all of us, before it was too late, before it was a done deal, before you started communicating with buyers, before these licenses were even applied for. If I understand this correctly, this meeting tonight has no bearing at all on whether we get a dispensary or not. Because according to the law director, if we stop the process now, we might get sued. How does the city law director... I got one more couple lines.
Okay, thank you.
You okay with that?
Yes.
I'm wondering how a city law director gets us into a predicament like this, or is it just a ruse to divert attention, deflect responsibility, and speed the process? Here's my honest observation, and again, I could be wrong. I think some confidence in our city officials has been lost, and I think any hope for transparency is long gone. I don't think it has a place in our community. I'm not sure it has a place in our county. So here's my question. Simple questions. Regardless of what is said in this room tonight, if the state offers a license to dispense medical marijuana tomorrow, is it already a done deal? If it is, what's next? What's going on behind closed doors now? What other secret projects are in the works? And when will you let us know? Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Members of council and folks in the crowd. My name is Pete Shea. I'm with the Huron County Health Department, and I'm here tonight representing the Board of Health, and just want to share some thoughts from myself and our board as we move down this road. And it wouldn't be like me at this point to take a tangent to remind everyone it's flu season. And I'm not kidding. Please wash your hands with soap, and get on everybody you can, because we have several outbreaks in the community. So now, monitoring disease is something we do at the health department. Collecting data is another thing we do, and I think we do very well. The actual Board of Health is made up of 11 people from across our county. They're our friends and neighbors, and they serve with me in an advisory capacity on issues germane to public health in our community. So in researching what I wanted to say tonight, I found a study by Dartmouth Medical School from just a couple months ago that has a definitive link of adolescents living in medical marijuana states with dispensaries and their likelihood and the increases in those kids who have tried new methods of cannabis use, such as edibles and vaping, at a younger age than those living in states with fewer dispensaries. And we know this data is accurate. It's extrapolated, and we have the same data here from Erie County, and we compare that data with our county, our state, and our nation. This data also suggests there's a strong relationship between the degree of regulatory oversight of the legal cannabis and kids' propensity for trying new ways to use it. We need to start having a broader conversation about how best to design the production and distribution regulations for legal cannabis to mitigate potential public health harms. So, you know, to speak freely, we're looking at a situation where we've worked really hard as a community to get our kids to understand, you know, just say no and talk to our kids and keep talking and have a conversation. And we're showing glimmers of hope in our youngsters. The percentage of kids that are smoking pot for the first time, ages 12 to 14, is down to 8% in Erie County. That's 500 kids. Okay, that's down. That's down from 11% a couple of years ago. So bringing in a dispensary, bringing in a grow facility, bringing in the conversation as you drive by on the street is something that's awkward and counterproductive to everything we've worked on so far based on this addiction battle. So the one lady did say, and it's very true, that young brains really are affected much stronger exponentially to the use of cannabis. And that's something that I'm very worried about. Due to the data that we have collected in 05, 08, 011, 2013, 2015, and data we just collected in November from all of our schools, we can trend those, the youth use of drugs and alcohol. And the statistics are startling, even though I said we're getting a little bit better. We use that data and we applied for and received a drug-free communities grant. And I know the older gentleman in the back said he hates grants. And I understand his opinion on that. But we're getting $1.3 million over 10 years to work with our kids in our community. And we have a program called Spark. And I think there's about 20 kids in the Huron schools that are in the Spark program. And they're all great kids. And they're the captains of tomorrow. So it's unfortunate we're bringing in grant money to fight things like marijuana use. So finish up here, I've got 6 main points I wanted to share with the council on behalf of the Board of Health. And these can change and these can morph into other things as we go down this road. But number one, the Board of Health is interested in finding solutions to current issues facing us today and in the future. We're willing to have this dialogue with anybody interested in talking about this issue with us. Any time of day, any day of the week, we'll set up a meeting and sit down and try to dialogue together. Number two, the Erie County Board of Health recognizes medical marijuana. What's that? 20 seconds? Oh, all right. All right. Medical marijuana has its use. We see the legitimacy growing. It's still a C1 product, which means it's highly addictive. No matter what anybody says up here, take a room full of stoners and take their dope away from them and watch their actions and their attitudes. I've been there, I've seen it. Pardon me? Whatever. I agree with you. Take my ho-hos from me. So the Board of Health says, you know, we concur, we need more research on the process. We're searching for support for our opiate addiction battle. We don't want to alienate the medical marijuana folks, but we're not ready to agree that medical marijuana is a legitimate alternative to opioids because it hasn't been ruled so far since. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Beth Fisher, Ohio Street.
Beth Fisher, Ohio Street. The presentation tonight sounded wonderful, but I really don't think that's what we need in our community of 7,000 people and only 8 square miles. And we also need to consider the source. It was Jeff McCourt's job to sell the positives, and it's our job to be diligent in researching the negatives. He is trying to make money. We are trying to keep our community family friendly. In a meeting with my husband and I on Martin Luther King Day, Andy, you told us that Jeff McCourt quit his law practice. He said it again tonight, to work specifically for this company. It must be a pretty lucrative offer for him to quit a law practice. Before his page became no longer found, Jeff's personal page for the practice he worked for listed that he specialized in cannabis startup businesses. This isn't his first rodeo in convincing a city council how wonderful this would be for their community. Jeff's definitely a good salesman, but I'm believing that our council members and our community realize it's his job to sell this, not to tell the negatives. Did he make us aware that grow facilities emit a stench like skunk? No. Jeff, I hope that his company plans to put in purifiers or whatever is needed to keep that stench away from the other businesses, the college, and the homes that are close by. Andy and Laura, at the last council meeting, you told everyone that you advised against pulling out of this because we might get sued. But you told my husband and myself that we weren't going to get sued. Could you set the record straight? So he's going to respond to that tonight? Okay. I'm wondering, did you attempt to investigate how Mansfield was able to ban marijuana businesses without being sued? John Spawn, the city, and they were at the same point we were. Somebody had already put money down on location, and they had already applied for a license, and they still were able to ban it without being sued. John Spawn, the city law director for Mansfield, told me he is certain that our city council still has the legal authority to prohibit dispensary without being sued, because no license has been issued and they are not operating yet. They offered copies of their ordinances and said you could use emergency legislation. One of the statistics my husband and I sent you 2 weeks ago before the last council meeting was about Colorado, where medical marijuana has been legal since the early 2000s. Yet, as my husband said earlier, 66% of their jurisdictions still do not allow medical marijuana businesses in their communities. Why is that? After 15 years of medical marijuana, what do they know that we don't know? Now they have recreational marijuana and still bans are not being lifted. I would beg our council members to at least put a moratorium on dispensaries until you can further investigate these questions. Vail, Colorado is one jurisdiction that has banned all marijuana businesses, saying they wanted to keep their brand of being known as a family-friendly place to ski. We have Cedar Point, beautiful beaches, bike paths, right out to the marijuana. And good schools. My children and grandchildren love coming to Huron. They can ride their bikes anywhere, to the beach, to get ice cream, to the library, etc. They think Huron is a little like heaven to be able to have the freedom they have here. Why do we want to chance changing that? Why eat guinea pigs for what is going to happen in Ohio with the marijuana industry? We really don't know yet. We think we have all these stringent things in place, but we don't know. Rather than trying to be cutting edge, why not be smart and see how this plays out in Ohio? Medical marijuana hasn't played out very well in other states, mainly due to unethical doctors willing to hand out medical marijuana cards freely. Nor has our state medical board done very well overseeing unethical doctors prescribing opiates. Now we are going to trust that they will do well with medical marijuana. You can get high on medical marijuana, and I think Jeff made that clear. You can vape hash oils, which our young people are very familiar with already. Before you put a dispensary at the entrance and the access road, all families in Huron used to drop off their 3rd through 6th graders know that along with legitimate users of the drug will come abusers. We may not see the ramifications for a while, but they will come. And as people said earlier, research is showing that mind-altering drugs, especially in young people, does change brain chemistry, causing things like depression and paranoia. Again, I would urge council to consider these ramifications, especially for young people, and put a ban on dispensaries in our small community. I guess it comes down to what we want our community to look like. Do we want to stay family-friendly? As a school nurse for many years, my job is to make sure children are as healthy as they can be to be able to learn to the best of their ability and consequently succeed in life. I ask myself, is this going to help families or could it possibly hurt families? My experience says it will hurt families and make it more difficult for young people I serve to succeed. I don't want that, and I hope you won't chance that either and will vote to ban the dispensary at Burger King location or anywhere in our small community of only 8 square miles, 3 of which are in water, and only 7,000 people. It doesn't belong in Huron. It belongs in the bigger city.
About a month or two ago, this is just an informational on my part. About a month or so ago, a gentleman by the name of Gary Payne. Oh, I'm sorry, Bill Scott, 213 Ohio Street.
Thank you.
Gary? She knows. About a month or so ago, Gary Payne, who some of you might know, who's an avid runner and done a lot of marathons, especially Boston Marathon, called me and suggested an idea that we both ran with a little bit and got together race directors in the town. And this is kind of what we came up with, and I want to kind of read what we're planning on doing. It doesn't affect the city or anything. If anything, is to promote the city as well as the races that we have. This is hopefully what we're going to be sending out to the papers within the week here. Huron has quickly become known as a runner's town with a wide variety of 5K races and course locations. There was sure to be a race for everyone. Luckily for runners everywhere, a new series has brought all the races together in an exciting new series. Race Runners announced today that they will be hosting the inaugural We Run This Town 5K race series this year. This new series will consist of 5 races, which I'll mention a little bit later. We refer to that, as we said, We Run This Town. In addition to individual race awards, participants will take home exclusive We Run This Town race series swags. Each person who runs and completes all 5 of the races will earn a commemorative race series mug, beer sign, and/or beer sign, and a certificate of participation. Also, the top 3 male and female racers with the lowest combined times for all races will win cash prizes of $125 for first, $75 for second, and $50 respectively at the end of the series. As I mentioned, Gary Payne was the one that suggested that, only because of the 5 races that we have. I would like to mention then the 5 races we have, not to take up your time. The first one has to be the Abbey Rose Trail Run 5K run and walk. It'll be now Saturday, May 5th. It'll be hosted at Favens. It has been hosted at Bowling Green in the past, but we moved it to Favens Park this year. Of course, the Huron Riverfest 5K and Fun Run will be Saturday, July 14th during the Riverfest, which of course is run down by the lake as well as around the high school. BGSU Firelands Falcon Fun Race is Saturday, September 15th, approximately 9 a.m., which of course is run at Bowling Green. The St. Peter School Spectacular 5K Run for Kids, Pumpkin Fun Run, Saturday, October 27th at 9. And of course, the Judy Lively Memorial Annual Turkey Dash, which is Thursday, on Turkey Day, of course, November 22nd at 9 a.m. Obviously, as I said, our hope is to encourage people to come to the town, but as well as participate and help the races that we have. Each of them have certain things that they host or support. For example, the Abbey Rose supports SIDS and helps families who've lost children. Bowling Green has a fund for themselves. The Riverfest one helps cross-country, track, and Young Life in Erie County. Judy Lively's, or the Pumpkin Run, of course, helps St. Pete's schools. And Judy Lively's is, of course, the Judy Lively Scholarship Fund. Last but not least, hopefully, we made up our own series that we're going to hopefully put on the arms of each of the kids or families' t-shirts, which we designed and incorporated with the town logo, as you can see almost. So we hope that, again, we just let you know that we're supporting the town as well as supporting our races. And I thank you for your time.
I always get so nervous, but
I feel so strongly about this. I
Name and
really
address for
do.
the record, please.
Okay, my name is Janet Powell, and I'm at 1715 Land's End Drive. And I want to show you this. This is an article. This was a full-page ad by the Partnership for drug-free kids. When you see, it's a man standing at the medicine counter, and in the mirror is the reflection of who? His granddaughter, maybe, taking, this is a huge problem. You know, when they had the panel of experts there talking about security and talking about how they were going to secure this facility, that was to me kind of pointless. That's not how kids get their drugs. That's not how the opioid crisis happened. They got it out of the medicine cabinets. And when they talked about smokable versus the medical marijuana and how that's not going to be making a big distinction between that, that's really not the point either. The point is the THC content. That's the psychoactive ingredient in that. You have patches now that kids are calling brain damage patches. They have 30% THC in them. These are prescribed for Alzheimer's, and not the 30%, but you're going to have medical marijuana prescribed for Alzheimer's and think that kids are not going to, that person is going to be responsible for keeping track of it? Or somebody just even a cancer or something like that. Huron is a community just like, here's another one. This came out today. This is Time Magazine with the opioid diaries. This might as well be called Ohio Magazine, because 80% of this is Ohio. And it's because of the way that the highways are. It's because the trafficking is. We have a perfect location for it. We have 75, 71, 2 that goes across the turnpike. So you got all this perfect storm coming together, and I think we just have to all realize that, because to me, in that, what that guy aptly called an infomercial, they talk about cancer, you had no data, you had no statistics on cancer. Cancer, from what I've read, it varies in statistics, but cancer is like 5%, and it's an adjunct therapy. It's not, if you're dying of cancer, you want opioids, you want painkillers. Marijuana is not a painkiller, it binds to the receptor sites. It's a perception more than a painkiller. Changes that. But it probably, I would think from the research that I've done, probably, 90% of, pretty much everybody in this room probably would not hurt from marijuana. We could all smoke it right now and probably not be damaged. But Nate here, Isaiah back there, those are the people that can get into those cabinets and find those 30% patches and marijuana is actually more damaging, some studies say, than opioids, in that it's irreversible. And that brain damage on a young brain, some studies say, is irreversible. And we don't really have all that much information on it because it's not federally approved. And for that physician to sit up there at that last council meeting and say it's non-addictive, he may think it's not, but he's going against the whole FDA, he's going against all the research. So,
I'll give you 30 seconds.
okay, I'm done, but thank you.
Thank you.
There's a 3-minute time limit.
Is this on old news or can this be new news? Is this on old news or can this be new news?
This is just audience comments,
Okay.
yes.
My name is Julie Spitzley at 125 Williams Street. I am a trained research scientist. Before I started my completely unrelated career, I studied dozens of research a week over the course of 3 years. My job was to find truth in science, to weed out poorly designed research, and detect research that was designed with manipulation of data for emotional purposes, and even data research that has since proven invalid. I became quite good at it with my degree in exercise science, physiology, kinesiology, and gerontology. I earned the opportunity to perform research on the U.S. Olympic ski team and the Canadian national speed skating team, numerous NHL players, and also the opportunity to work with the aging population and cardiac rehab patients. Later, I was the director of a top 3 rated wellness spa in the U.S., which taught me new ways of healing through natural remedies. Living in Colorado until 2011 was living in the middle of a research project itself when it came to medical marijuana. The state haphazardly allowed what seemed to be uncontrolled prescriptions. Anybody could go to any kind of doctor to receive a medical marijuana prescription. I witnessed chiropractors telling their friends to come in and say they had back pain to receive a prescription. My tiny sweet town of 800 people allowed the largest indoor growing facility in the state at the time, 3 pot dispensaries and 2 pot bakeries. I could not get my family out of there fast enough. Understanding health a great deal and having learned an immense amount about medical studies, I was absolutely horrified at how harmful the state's actions were for something they were trying to advance. I knew medical marijuana could be helpful for many, and Colorado had made a folly out of it. It was a national sideshow, and it seemed they didn't care about our kids or communities, just the dollar. It truly saddened me and made me hate the idea of marijuana at all, if that is how a medical treatment was going to be presented. A fun for all, something akin to one of those Skittles parties for kids, using the front of advancement of medicine for a good time. Fast forward 6 to 7 years. Steve Arndt came to my door during election time and mentioned that Ohio had approved medical marijuana. I felt he was proud to tell me that because he saw my husband's Colorado farm plates on his truck in the driveway. I was not too happy, but putting my non-judgmental research cap on, I learned more about Ohio's rules. At that point, I felt pride for the state I had returned to. Thank God Colorado made the mistakes they had, because Ohio and more than half of the other states in the union have learned from those. Only MDs and DOs will write prescriptions. Ohio has regulated a list of medical conditions to allow for prescriptions, where that was not the case in Colorado. Patients must be reevaluated by their doctors every 90 days, where in Colorado, you could go in whenever you wanted, nobody cared, you didn't sign your name. If doctors fail to follow the laws in Ohio, they can lose their license, no questions asked. That is not the case in Ohio. Patients will be on record with the Ohio RX, which is an official reporting system. Nobody in their right mind who is a drug addict wants to be on record with the government. I think it's awesome. We all know that no doctor wants to lose their license and livelihood. And again, also know that no illicit drug user wants to be on record with the government as a drug user. There are more regulations than that, some of the most stringent in the nation. However, the laws were created in the name of the advancement of science and the health of its citizens. Anybody that is here today presenting facts on recreational pot is at the wrong discussion. Perhaps that discussion will be in the future, but in the discussion now, it is for finding help through prescriptions of a substance that is only starting to find its way into Western medicine.
Okay, Ms.
The-
Pitt,
I have
I
2
hate to cut
pages.
you off, but you're over 4 minutes now. Time limit.
I have 2 pages. 2 pages, and I'll be done.
2 pages.
I won't say
Ms.
anything else.
Council, want to waive the 3-minute time?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Very good, proceed.
The research I have found that is both valid and relevant of our topic tonight is both fascinating and hopeful. It is research that started decades ago all around the world. Be wary of people reporting on research, as many times the reports are only half-truths. To correct an earlier report that someone gave on Dartmouth's study, youth pot increased in towns where dispensaries were opened. Correction is, youth recreational pot grew in towns where there were multiple recreational dispensaries. Let it be clear that Colorado has thousands of dispensaries and pot bakeries all over the state, unmonitored. They are recreational and have little to no oversight. Ohio will have 60 medical dispensaries and a great amount of regulation and oversight. The research I have found that is both valid and relevant to our topic tonight is both fascination and hopefulness. It is research that started decades ago all around the world because the U.S. has not approved any studies on illegal marijuana. Our research is fairly new. Again, thank you, Colorado, for making the mistakes we learned from, but also for opening the door that we can now research this. Here is a brief on science that is beyond worthy for this conversation. Our body has numerous receptors for different things throughout our bodies. That is the main target of the big pharma concept. They create chemicals and drugs that attach to these receptors to do certain things. One of the most dangerous drugs we all know is our famous opioid. The opioid was somewhat of a miracle when created because it could do something that nothing else could do. It could pass through the blood-brain barrier. In order to get to certain parts of the brains which controlled things like pain, tremors, and spasm, the central nervous system, a medication had to be able to pass through the protective barrier of our brain that God put in place as protection. Sifting through old research from around the world, Israel being a scientific cutting-edge country, I began to see a most beautiful, truthful science behind cannabis when properly dosed as God's natural way to heal the brain. The body actually has receptors called cannabinoid receptors, which are part of their own system called the endocannabinoid system. The system is what Big Pharma created the highly addictive opioid to attach to enter the brain and hit the pain centers to alleviate pain. However, God, through his good graces, has already given us the key to our own brain to heal it. While our body does produce its own cannabinoids that perfectly fit into cannabinoid receptors, we do lose these cannabinoids more and more with age and oxidative stress. These cannabinoids are what take nutrients to our brains. When the body naturally depletes, God has graced us again with the only known plant to perfectly fit into these receptors and enter the brain for healing. No coincidence they share the same stem name. You have heard of recreational users and abusers' brains shrinking. However, truthful and relevant research from independent, world-renowned scientists have proven that cannabis, when used medically, can create neuroregeneration. That's growth of the brain. That is incredible and new science. As mentioned, cannabinoids will help mood and emotion, pain sensation, memory, metabolism, and more. These are just some of the treatments, as our early studies have focused greatly on the basal ganglia of the brain. This is found at the bottom of the forebrain and has direct influence on cognition, emotion, and voluntary motor movements. Alzheimer's, stroke patients, traumatic brain injury, seizures, and Lewy body brain degenerative diseases such as Parkinson's and progressive supranuclear palsy. Given proper dosage of medical cannabis, these have proven to positively influence with brain regeneration. Truthful studies and trials have yielded positive improvements for the subjects. How are we the ones to deny the people who need this treatment because we are worried about illicit drugs? This is highly watched over by our state. This is a place recreational drug users will not go near for the sake of being caught. And times have changed. People are tired of being duped on by Big Pharma, and this is a way as nature intended to nourish our brains and heal them from our degenerative brain diseases and disorders. It is time to start viewing this dispensary for what it is, a pharmacy. And though it is illegal to call it such because of lack of FDA approval, I don't see anybody thinking twice about taking their children to Drug Mart to pick up a prescription for their fever, even though there is an addict next to them picking up their opioid prescription. Again, this is a pharmacy for so many people who get no help from Western medicine. No hope, no help. If we know now through truthful research that these degenerative brain diseases and disorders can help heal or at least give better quality of life to our loved ones, who are we to stand to send them back to the black market with marijuana that is not dosed properly or properly laced with fentanyl? This is not a discussion for recreational marijuana and drug use in our community. This is a discussion for the advancement of scientific knowledge for people who have no other hope. This is a discussion of Huron having the opportunity to be a hub for a world movement into healthier, whole food, clean living. And by the way, I did not stop my research studies on just medical marijuana itself, but I also researched OPC. The family behind the company has needed medical marijuana for their loved ones. In an effort to make this treatment more available to others, they found a locally based medical marijuana professional from Israel that has introduced them to the world's most cutting-edge science tools and research. The company has wellness in mind, 100%. They are close with truthful professional researchers and scientists that are guiding them to create a science and research facility, one that will help them to...
My name is Glenn Satala, 713 Kingfisher Court, on or about the end of January, as well as Monday, April 23rd. I'd gotten 2 flyers in my mailbox. Party or organization and other essential information was not listed on. I was wondering if there's anybody here that did or knows who was out stuffing mailboxes with flyers. Okay. Let the record show that there was a United States Postal Service law against doing things like that. It's 18 U.S.C. 1725 states, whoever knowingly and willfully deposits any mailable matter such as statements of accounts, circulars, sale bills, or other like matter on which no postage has been paid in any letter box established, approved, or accepted by the Postal Service for the receipt of delivery of mail matter on any mail route with intent to avoid payment of lawful postage thereon, shall for each such offense be fined under this title. I don't understand why this shadowy organization can't reveal who they are, who they represent, where they're located, or any other essential information when they're out illegally stuffing mailboxes, yet trying to coerce the people's governmental body into enacting laws that they want followed. I don't understand why the shadowy organization cannot come out in the light of day, make their argument, whether the public debate, win, lose, or draw. If they have a good argument, it will survive. I don't understand why the shadow organization can't play by the same rules as everybody else. Every politician knows it's a lot easier to do what they need to do based on facts. This shadowy organization espouses opinion and lighthearted fact, yet they want the people's government to enact laws for other people to follow, just not themselves. I think if they play by the same rules as everybody else on a level playing field and be good sportsmen about it, we'd all have a meaningful discussion and debate on that subject at hand or any other subject. I think their actions causes one to have a high level of suspicion and concern as to what their true motives are when they stay in the shadows and can't come out and let everybody know who they are, what they represent, and what their true intentions are. The first flyer they passed out in the end of, on or about the end of January said they were just against the location of its dispensary at the defunct Burger King.
Hi, you guys have seen me many times. My name's Gina Woody, 327 Berlin Road. In regards to the pharmacy, acting as a pharmacy, thank you for making that point. Because operating here in the city of Huron right now is a Suboxone clinic that provides Suboxone to heroin users within the community. Suboxone is a synthetic form of heroin. I don't hear anybody in this room raising their arm and being up in arms about a Suboxone clinic that is legally operating within this community. I don't hear anybody upset about that. Sorry.
Direct the comments to us. Thank you.
That operates as a pharmacy, from my understanding. The Suboxone clinic provides Suboxone to heroin addicts trying to get off of heroin. So if a Suboxone clinic is operating as a pharmacy in this community and nobody really seems to be concerned about it, what is the big hoopla about a medical cannabis dispensary providing cannabis to patients that are legally allowed under the state of Ohio's law to access that medication? My other point is the Suboxone clinic here in Huron does not have any kind of security measures put in place to protect the businesses, which I think Ms. Crawford, her lawyer's office is right next door to the Suboxone clinic. And they have no security protecting her office from having heroin addicts going to get their medication from being able to break into her facility. They have no protection around that area to ensure that the citizens that reside or work or operate within that area are protected. Now, we all were at the meeting that OPC put on, in regards to the amount of security that this dispensary will have and the amount of security that the grow facility and processing plant will have. The dispensary will have a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week live stream video feed to the local police department, meaning our local police can look at any time inside of that facility and see who is going in and out, see what is going on inside, see what is happening on the outside of the facility. That is not happening in regards to the Suboxone Clinic here in Huron. Not only that, but the cannabis dispensary will be built with the same stipulations as maximum security prisons have. And the Suboxone Clinic does not have the same security standards as a maximum security prison has. So, if this community is perfectly acceptable with having a Suboxone Clinic operating within our community with no safety, with no police access within inside of the facility or outside of the facility, what is everybody's big hoopla about a medical cannabis dispensary? We are not talking recreational, we are talking medicine. This dispensary will operate better and safer than the Suboxone Clinic that is already operating legally within this community. Thank you.
Your 3-minute timer. Okay, seeing no one, we'll move on.
I didn't.
Coach?
Got 9 questions that I have after attending meetings this year and studying 271 emails from a records request from Studio Think, marketing firm. Can't help but wonder who's running Huron. Is it council? Is it those we voted into office to represent us? I don't think so. From what I gather, it's Andy White, Laura Alkire, OPC, Dennis Burnside, and Studio Think. I thought the lack of transparency between council and their constituents was poor. The transparency between council members, the mayor, and city manager seems almost non-existent. In fact, if you disagree with the elite members of our governing body, you get threatened with creating a hostile environment. Government, I'm sure, at its finest. Second, how is communication between council and the taxpayers? How's this, for example? I called Senator Gardner and left word on his voicemail. He called me back in 5 minutes and we talked for 30. I called one of our council members 4 months ago and he still hasn't called me back. Communication at its finest, I'm sure. Why are we using tax dollars to market OPC? This is my third question. They don't have the money to do their own marketing. They just get to fly under the radar and we market for them. With my money, just curious, does every business in Huron get the privilege or just the big boys with money? 4 of the 271 emails received in the records request, all but about 10 were relative to OPC. And according to our city manager at the last meeting, we hired Studio Think to market our city in magazines. When and where is that happening? Certainly not until after licenses are awarded, I'm sure. 5, this survey, the one released without discussion of the entire council, why is Burnside and Associates involved? I thought we hired them to bring big business into town. We paying them big bucks to be a part of the marketing frenzy for OPC. Dennis Burnside gets to create, review, and suggest alternate wording of the survey, but most of council didn't even know the survey existed until it was released. Sorry, council, apparently you aren't considered part of the influencer crowd. 6, why is our law director involved in discussions about the survey? Our law director doesn't have better things to do than market OPC. I thought she was so busy with the courts that she needed an assistant. By the way, I understand she's swamped with records requests, and that's a big reason she needs an assistant. Here's a news flash. If you're transparent, you don't get swamped with records requests. It seems a lack of transparency carries a heavy price. 7, by the way, in the records request made by my wife, not all the emails were released. She was informed some were protected by lawyer-client privilege. Who's our law director client? I thought the people of Huron were the clients that she was hired to protect. OPC gets all the benefits. 8, here's a question for the leadership of this group. Of the 271 emails, Mr. Genesi was included in about 5, and none of the other council members were ever included. And when council found out about the survey, it pushed back after it was already distributed on Facebook and placed in local businesses. Studio Think suggested not to follow the advice of council to terminate, but rather to give them an opportunity to be a part of the next survey. Wow, how nice of them to include the people we voted into office. And finally, here's the last question, and I'll give you an answer. What are we really marketing in Huron? Is it the lake, the schools, the fine people of Huron? I don't think so. If you want to know what we are all about in the eyes of the influencers, log on to our city website. Find the biggest picture right in the middle of the page, and you'll see a presidential-like portrait of who we are really all about. Sad, but true. Thank you.
Steve Fisher, 214 Ohio Street, Huron. Again, Andy White with co-worker Laura, city manager of Huron the Marijuana City, law director of Huron the Marijuana City. You're the leader and responsible for this mess. Should have taken all this time to admit mistakes and correct, rather than cover it up and hire a marketing firm and taxpayer money. Laws rather than the spirit of the laws, half-truths, no-truths, manipulation, situational ethics, Sandusky propaganda register, rather than what's good for families, citizens, and Huron. Stinks. Brad Hartung, mayor of Huron the Marijuana City. You're the mayor, leader of council of Huron the Marijuana City, ditto above. Medical marijuana is out there, truly needed, not good for Huron. Selling marijuana sounds like it's sounding like some kind of super drug now. Sounds like the lottery for the schools. We'll change the character of the city. Last stat I saw, biggest users of and abusers of medical marijuana cards, 18 to 24-year-olds. Not people with cancer or a lot of chronic pain issues. What pharmacies have armed guards and cash-only accounts? Stinks. Glenn Genesi, council of Huron the Marijuana City. Negotiating the move from Burger King. Don't feel good about it. Compromise. Huron still has a dispensary and you could make money. What about kids and families? Ditto above. Also, again, what happened to new council format proposal? Us 3 minutes, you 5 minutes, or council, whatever. No real discussion, all behind closed doors. Huron the Marijuana City. How's that sound? Stinks. Andy and council of Huron the Marijuana City. If you were sincere, you would have voted this out a long time ago. You could have used that marketing taxpayer money for roads and other city improvements. Process and procedure looks to me like stalling and delay. For the license, being grandfathered in and having an excuse. There's an attitude, culture, and good old boys. Under the table, Chicago mob mentality, people and or businesses of influence with power and money, whereby people need to work with the city manager and or council rather than the council work with the people. Also, that speaker we had a few weeks ago, the doctor. I see he got a call from the attorneys representing the farm and the dispensary before he spoke that night. I wish I would have asked him what they had to say. Sounds to me like intimidation. Sounds to me like the Washington swamp. Planning Commission doesn't want it. Erie County Board of Health says no. School board resolution, close to 400 say no. Huron Township says no. Council meeting after council meeting, people saying no. We've talked to a lot of other people throughout the community that don't want any dispensaries, even the firemen Huron. Council and Andy finish strong, as I said before. Show real leadership and do what's right. Vote out all dispensaries in Huron, and or we need to finish strong and clean out the swamp. Please pray for wisdom. Thank you. God bless Huron.
I don't know if this is the appropriate place according to the agenda here, but Lori Legando, 202 Drive Boulevard. In February, I attended a special meeting of our Board of Education. It was called to publicly discuss concerns that a medical marijuana dispensary was going into the Burger King near Woodland School and a school access road. At that board meeting, members informed us that early on, in their role as publicly elected school board members, they were approached and made aware of the possibility of a medical marijuana cultivation facility in Huron. and were asked to keep quiet. They were asked to keep this secret from the community, from their constituents, and they did. I imagine this allowed OPC during a competitive process to insinuate to the state licensing agency that they not only had the support of Huron City Council, but of our school board as well. And they were off. OPC received and continues to receive special attention, privileges, confidentiality, and anonymity. I understand that in the private business world, in their negotiations, there are often requests for anonymity, usually in order to gain an advantage over their private business competitors. In my opinion, there's no place for this sort of gameplay, jockeying for personal advantage in a small town public arena. Elite, wealthy, outside private business owners should not get a special seat at the table, behind closed doors, and hidden from the eyes and ears of the community, only allowing out what information benefits them and when and where it can be made known. It shouldn't matter how virtuous you or I or anyone else thinks their private business venture is. This is about the integrity of the system and the people in it. Last month I heard here what good people the owners of OPC are. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I don't know. I don't know if I particularly care to know. I do know, what is obvious, is that they are very good at what they do and how they do it. It makes me wonder, though, what kind of people sneak into a small, quiet community, get the ear of our city manager, and then quickly manipulate to get what they want, all the while shielding themselves from scrutiny. Community partners, on whose terms? I would think the best predictor of how someone is going to treat you in the future is how they've treated you in the past. And that worries me, because he who has the money has the power. I want the people of Huron to have the power, even if our streets are never paved in gold. I commend anyone who has made calls, requested meetings, sent emails, or stood up here. No matter what your personal opinion on medical marijuana is, we should all agree that public discourse is necessary and should be respected. Perhaps if more people had done a better job of this when private pharmaceutical companies were spending lots of money spinning OxyContin as the best scientifically proven, non-addictive, controllable substance solution to pain, and they were marketing to intelligent, educated people, doctors with backgrounds in science, we wouldn't be dealing with the epidemic of abuse and addiction we have today. I'm disappointed, though, to find that instead of encouraging these questions, concerns, and different points of view, which is what great leaders do, they welcome dissent and skepticism. Our city manager is receiving guidance from a public relations firm on how to neutralize it, for example, using social media and a list of influencers. Maybe some of those, you know what, last week you let someone speak on for nearly 10 minutes. Okay, I'm almost done. Let's see. For example, social media and a list of influencers, and maybe some of those influencers are here tonight. I'd like to know if our council knows who's on that list of influencers. Aren't you the ones who put yourself out there, ran for office, campaigned, and got elected by the people? People want more than just to, quote, feel more included. We people have legitimate concerns and want honest answers. We deserved that from the get-go. It would have been nice if before the election we knew where the candidates stood on this issue. I understand that OPC has been under a time crunch to get the green light from Huron, but we are under no obligation to continue to do their bidding. I also understand that the city is currently involved in a lawsuit involving their refusal, citing attorney-client privilege, to release some public records. The council is the sole sovereign authority of Huron, not the city manager, not the law director, nor anyone sitting in a fancy office in Cleveland, and certainly not OPC. I urge council members to put on the brakes, take control, and vote to ban a medical marijuana dispensary in Huron until such a time as that we can be shown that that is what the majority of the residents want. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bob Howell. I'm a resident, but also on the Planning Commission. I've been either on the Planning Commission or Design Review for a decade, and I've never seen a better group, a better staff, city staff, our city council members, people who love this city and do whatever they can for it every time they can. They promote business, they do spend hours and hours of their own time, personal time, not just paid time, to make the city one of the best cities on the North Coast. They are tremendous, we should support them. I'm also here to strongly support the medical marijuana dispensary. The dispensary currently meets all the zoning requirements. I believe it should have been allowed to be put at the Burger King, but that appears that it's not going to happen. It is a legal, lawful business that promotes economic growth of the city, and the city council should support it. It's my belief that things may get tough for the U.S. economy in the coming years. There are a lot of things that might point that way, and I think it's the city council's duty, part of your job, is to promote new businesses, make sure businesses, that the city grows, that new businesses are willing to come in, and when they do, don't present obstacles to their coming into the city. That's your duty. You can't be influenced by misinformation about marijuana, medical marijuana. As I said, also obviously it'll increase the tax base for a city. Once one business comes in, another wants to follow. It always happens that way. We need business in the city. We need roads, we need schools, we need all those things, and it's not going to get paid for by anyone except us. Again, it's your job. What you signed up for is to help promote business, make the community what it should be. Medical marijuana is a good thing, not a bad thing. It's been proven to be a better long-term pain medication than opioids. Opioids actually change the physical structure of the brain. As noted in a recent Sanjay Gupta special on CNN, was out just a couple weeks ago. It changes the structure so that the patient can no longer make good decisions for themselves, and so they can't say no to the drug. They stay addicted. Medical marijuana reverses that, changes it. Took hundreds of slices of brains through autopsies. It's been proven that it changes that brain structure back to normal. Medical marijuana is non-addictive. It is a great pain relief for all kinds of old people, young people, soldiers. My son is U.S. Army, currently in the U.S. Army Special Forces combat medic. He wants this. He wants medical marijuana so his guys don't have to be dependent on opioids. Again, one more thing, support the city council, city staff. You guys do a great job. Thanks.
Robert Smith, 207 William Street. I've been listening to this debate for quite a while now, and it seems like a lot of the uproar is an argument against marijuana as a recreational drug, which is not the issue that's before us. What is before us is, in fact, voted by the majority of people in the state of Ohio. I've also heard tonight that because they're putting enhanced security on the facility, it indicates that something is wrong. My wife's a pharmacist. You can't open a pharmacy in a drugstore without a licensed pharmacist being there. It is already under the same sort of security, a little less because people can be out on the outside buying aspirin, but they can't get into where the drugs are unless there's a licensed pharmacist present. Now, having said that, yes, this is even going a bit further. This medication, and that's what we're talking about here, is potentially a real breakthrough for, on a lot of different levels, but it is not recreational marijuana. And I hope that the City Council understands that they have taken a stand here that is important to the health of the people of the country. Last couple months ago, we had the physician from Toledo talking about it. He spoke like an MD. He wanted chemicals rather than plants. And yet I remind you, a lot of people take supplements. They take ginkgo biloba and they take all these things over the counter because the American people believe that supplements are in fact useful. As a matter of fact, plant remedies historically have shown themselves to be viable drugs over time. Well, white willow bark, used for centuries, was finally made into aspirin. And I think what we're going to be doing in this case is moving cannabis forward in order to make medications that will be distilled, and we will be on the front row of bringing relief to people. Now, I've had back surgery. When I came out, I was getting fentanyl patches, and I was given opioids. I didn't like any of them. I went off them just like the doctors wanted me to. I was told to take ibuprofen around the clock. I developed an allergy to ibuprofen. Now I go to the ER if I take ibuprofen or aspirin or Celebrex or anything like that. I know my doctor told me I'm going to have back surgery again because it goes up my spine. I would like to know that if I go through this surgery, I'm not going to have to rely entirely on opioids, which is what it is right now. I think we need to allow the people who are going to regulate this program, and it's going to be regulated. Kids aren't going to come over from Woodland. The people who will be able to purchase are going to go to physicians who have been licensed to do this, and then their cases will be reviewed by the Ohio Board of Pharmacy, which again is a very stringent organization. Ask my wife, she's a pharmacist, and they will be able to go into that store and authorize to purchase. But this is going to be a medical dispensary. It is not recreational marijuana. Please do not allow yourselves to be confused by people who are afraid of potheads. I wouldn't vote for that either. But what you're doing here, I think, is good for the state and for the people of the state. Thank you.
Shannon Pollock, Man's End, Drive. I tell you, this is as good as taking a Toastmasters class, because I hate public speaking, but I keep getting up here and I just want to recap some of the things that I've been so concerned about. First of all, when we talk medical marijuana, it just seems pointless to put it just all under that umbrella. It's the THC and the CBD. And the CBD is actually the more therapeutic part of the medical marijuana. The THC is what they don't know about. The THC is the part that could be harmful, could be irrevocably harmful to a young brain. Different laws, I mean, when we say that different states have legalized medical marijuana, they all have different allowable levels of THC, and that's the big thing that they, I mean, in fact, Florida has 0.8 allowable THC in its product. Mississippi has 0.5 THC allowable in its product. Missouri has 0.3 allowable THC in its product. Do you guys know what the proposed parameters of Ohio is? We didn't get to vote on that. We got to vote on medical marijuana. We did not get to vote on the THC. Do you guys know what it is? The proposed?
Off the top of my head, no. But I do remember recall reading about it.
Got a guess?
Can you share?
Can you guys guess?
Certainly less than one.
23 to 35%.
I greatly disagree with you.
Okay, there it is.
All right,
You got a
Ms.
lawyer
Pollack,
there.
Ms. Pollack,
20, okay, 23, that's so important. 23 to 35% in 4 ounces of it, and in 6 ounces it can have less than 23%. That is so important. And when we even talk about recreational marijuana was, see, I made this little visual aid of marijuana. See, here's the THC. And that's what we knew is the Cheech and Chong and the getting high.
It's recreational marijuana.
That was the THC. No, that was the THC marijuana. Here's the change. They've changed the face of marijuana by combining, well, it always had CBD in it, but emphasizing the CBD. CBD, and so it's like, well, why can't you just take the CBD out and leave the harmful stuff aside? You can. You can buy it on the internet. You can buy it down on 250. at the health food store, they have it, it doesn't sell because it doesn't have the THC in it. And then, let me just go for reciprocity. I wanted to talk about that a little bit because that could be a big deal. Ohio law right now, when we talk about the parameters of, you know, how strict the regulations on Ohioans are gonna be, we're not talking the reciprocity with other states. And the state law right now looks as if as soon as the dispensaries go in, we're going to have reciprocity with New York, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania right off the bat. The language in the Ohio law is loophole friendly for reciprocity with other states. What difference does that make? It makes a big difference. Because we can say, oh yeah, well, you know, our THC level is not, you know, any higher than some states. I'm not exactly sure what theirs is in California or Colorado. But look at this. Look at this map. Look where Colorado is located. And think about the implications of reciprocity. Colorado near it has Wyoming, and what do they have? 157 people in the state. I mean, I'm being facetious, but you've got Wyoming, you've got Utah, where you have a lot of Mormons, where you have religious restrictions. Ohio is perfect. Businessmen looking at this map, Ohio is perfect. Our roads are great, the infrastructure's great. And you have, that's gonna be a big deal, is the reciprocity. Location of dispensaries. You know, yeah, medical marijuana is legal in Alabama, but you can only get it from the University of Alabama in Birmingham. That's the only place that you can get it. Almost. Kentucky, you can get it from any state university hospital. It's gotta be at a state university hospital. It's just that these variables make it makes a huge difference. And it was brilliant PR to market, to take something and market it this way. And then just in closing, we just kind of wanted to show this picture. And we got a choice here tonight in voting for the dispensaries. We can either shake hands with these anonymous investors, whoever they are, and that might lead us to our rec center that we want. Even it might lead us to more economic prosperity in the community. Or we can stand together with a firm grasp on what we do have in this community. And I hope we will do that. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say again, I don't think that anybody really is here too much disputing medical marijuana. The big point is having a dispensary in Huron. Having listened to Shannon, we know that we're familiar with the danger of marijuana to young brains. Many new studies in various parts of the world. And that's where my concern rests, is having a dispensary in Huron, because when there is a dispensary in a community, there are more young people using marijuana. And I wish we weren't willing to take that risk in Huron. There's no benefit that's worth the risk of what it's going to do to young people. It's just better in a larger community. And I think you know that tomorrow they're voting on it. The state is voting on it, or the state is releasing tomorrow, according to their agenda, where the dispensaries are going. Sam, you're saying no? That was on their agenda. They canceled the meeting? Okay, well, this is really your last chance to make a difference. I wish sometime you could be in my office at Woodlands, in the nurse's office, and see what alcohol, drugs are doing to our young people. Some for sure are behind the 8 ball coming out of the womb. I guess I better stick to my notes. Believe me when I say, having worked in school nursing for over 17 years, we're seeing huge consequences of mind-altering drugs, be it alcohol, marijuana, or prescription drugs, causing all kinds of issues with kids. And I said this to you guys a couple weeks ago, but I just feel it's important enough to say it again. That was my biggest take home with Dr. Forney's talk. There's not enough education to the public about what these drugs are doing to our kids. Some people scoffed when he said, if you are of childbearing age, don't drink or take drugs. I know it sounds extreme, but he is right. It's hugely affecting our children. It's hugely affecting them. As far as the argument that this is only medical marijuana, I think you're smarter than believing that this is all that will use it. I already know of some young men that licking their chops for September to come around, users who want to use it recreationally. They aren't worried about getting arrested. If they have their marijuana card, they believe they are safe. That's their mindset. Being registered with the government isn't a concern to them at all. Obviously, as a nurse, I want people who need relief to have access to whatever will help. And I hope that marijuana and the research they're doing in it is helpful. It's just Huron is too small. We're only 8 square miles, 3 of which are in water, so we're 5 square miles, and we're a small population of 7,000. And they talked about Big Pharma being corrupt. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and substitute it with corrupt big marijuana. And it is big marijuana. Right now, marijuana is being set up like liquor stores or like tobacco. And way back when tobacco was being pushed, they had doctors saying it's going to help you relax. People need it to help them relax, that sort of thing. So this is it's just coming around again. Eventually, it will be legal recreationally. I know then it can be taxed big time, but this is what we want in our community. We really need to fix the corruption in Big Pharma and put marijuana in with all other drugs regulated by the FDA. It's still best to scientifically prove what is beneficial in the plant and what is dangerous. You want your constituents, here we are, they're getting 4 licenses out there, potentially, and all we're asking is for you to compromise one of them, the dispensary. And I think that you guys are the ones that can do it. You're really, the 7 of you are really saying what our town's gonna be like in the future. So I hope you'll consider doing what the Planning Commission, the Erie County Board of Health, and many, many citizens have asked you to do, vote to ban marijuana dispensaries in Huron. Just the dispensaries is all we're asking. We had no choice on the other, but we do have it on this. And it's you guys that are making that choice. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Brian Murphy, and I'm an oncologist in town. I don't think my debate would be, is there a role for medical marijuana? I think there is. I think in a proper situation, and the proper person, there is benefit. I think there's a lot of controversy as to what the true benefits are, because there's not a lot of research. They're really, like the way we research drugs is quite exhaustive before it gets approval. And we know exactly what's in that drug. So when you're buying something, we know the exact chemical nature, we know what's in it. A lot of research has been shown. Is it safe? What's it used for? Is there interactions? For medical marijuana, we don't know any of those things. I think there's dozens of medical conditions patients might have in which they can get the medical marijuana card. And it can be as loose as irritable bowel syndrome. It can be cancer, it can be pain, it can be restless legs. So there's a lot of medical indications for which a patient can go and pay to get their card. And so a physician looks at the records and determines that they have a medical condition to get the card, and then they're free to get the drug. So again, I think there's a role for medical marijuana in certain situations, but we don't know a lot what those really are. But I think the debate today is really not so much as a role for medical marijuana, it's a state law. It's should there be a dispensary in our little town? And I would not be in favor of that. I think that what's going to happen is there's going to be an influx of people who may need the card. I've got a lot of patients who use it. They get it at big dispensaries that are established and effective. I don't know how those communities are, but you know, they're bigger than Huron, and they've got a lot of bigger infrastructure to help manage the crowds and the potential risks and complications that it's going to bring. I think if dispensaries in our town, we're going to open a floodgate to a lot of people flooding in to get the medical marijuana, whether it be appropriate or not. And then if recreational marijuana gets approved, will be a natural place for that, and it's going to be nothing but the place to go to get your marijuana. So I think, again, I don't think the debate is really so much as medical marijuana effective, and just like morphine is effective, but not everybody should, you know. So I think there's a role for it in certain situations, but I'm concerned that the way the system is now, people who have $250 can buy a card and get it. That's easy to do. And the patients I have who get that card go to dispensaries right now in Michigan and Pennsylvania, and so they can get it. If dispensaries are started to be designated in communities, I would be in favor of having a bigger community, bigger infrastructure that can control the potential problems it's going to bring, and we all know it's going to bring potential problems. So I think that's the debate, not so much the uses of it, the indications of it, but is it right for our town? And I think most of the people who moved here to be in a small, friendly, safe, comfortable, family-oriented environment, having a medical marijuana dispensary isn't what we would want.
There's a 3-minute timer.
Jason Hinners, 1130 Mudbrook Road. Good evening, Council. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the Register for being here this evening. I appreciate their attendance for such a minor piece of legislation. The Conagra parcel has been labeled by the city manager as the crown jewel of the city. However, the legislation before you fails to treat it as such and should be rejected for the following 2 reasons. First, based on the legislative agenda, you don't have anywhere near the information you need to make an informed decision. You don't know the value of the property. If you did, the purchase price wouldn't be $1 for 2 acres and a set reimbursement amount for the 3rd acre. Rather, it would be based on an appraisal from an independent appraiser that gives you the value now and what it will be after the public improvements are done. You don't know if indoor boat storage and office use is the best use of the property. For the past 16 months, this property has been tied up with one party, Liberty Development, which means you have heard from only one voice regarding development of the site. The current proposal may be the best scenario for Liberty, but not necessarily for the city of Huron. Now that you have all the information on the soil condition and the site, an RFP process will allow for alternative proposals from multiple developers. You don't know the total cost for the proposed public improvements. We've heard approximately $1 million for the infrastructure and $200,000 per acre for soil stabilization, but the legislative agenda doesn't state a cost for either. As stewards of taxpayer money, you need certainty of these costs before entering into a purchase agreement that requires you to pay them. And as an aside, when the EPA gave the city the go-ahead on this project, it was noted by the city administration to the newspaper that Huron taxpayers won't pay a penny for any development or construction work. Clearly that is not the case. The second reason this legislation needs to be rejected is because the comments made by the city manager to the Sandusky Register yesterday. According to Mr. White, there is no specific direction about the Conagra site. There has been discussion about a traditional RFP process, that indoor boat storage has been investigated, had been investigated, and council is unlikely to authorize the proposal. If these comments are taken at face value, then what are we doing here tonight? This meeting would have been canceled and the proposed ordinance would have been withdrawn, but it wasn't, and the proposed ordinance is still before you. As you and I know, Mr. White's statements defy logic and reality, because if there is no specific direction on the site, then why was the legislation put on the agenda at the 11th hour last Tuesday? And if there has been discussion about a traditional RFP process, then why do you have a purchase agreement before you for the sale of 3 acres to Liberty? And if indoor boat storage had been, past tense, investigated, why does the legislative agenda before you show indoor boat storage? The truth is, Mr. White had every intention of pushing this legislation through council last Tuesday with the hope it could be done without public scrutiny. And let's be honest, we've seen this act before. The city manager's actions and statement to this council and to the public need to be rooted in fact, not self-promotion or self-protection when public opinion turns. Finally, the city manager stated in a recent article about the Conagra site that city government is an expression of its citizens, and and whatever concept goes in has to be publicly approved. Over the past week, your constituents have made their voices known to you by email, phone, in person, through social media, and tonight in a public setting. If you've heard our voices and agree that city government is an expression of its citizens, you will reject this legislation, you will ask questions until you get answers, and you will demand factual information. You will do so to ensure that the next time a proposal comes before you, it will treat this city and the Conagra site as a crown jewel, and it will benefit this community for generations to come. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Matt Clare, 132 Center Street, Huron, Ohio. I am here as citizen Matt Clare, not representing Hody Enterprises this evening, but I think all parties have received the Hody letter with regard to our interest in being involved in the boat storage, should it be considered at the Conagra site. We do a little bit of that, having 275,000 square feet of boat storage, and when we saw the article and the information come out that that was being considered, that kind of piqued our interest. So, at this time, with regard to Hody, we strongly feel that this opportunity was open for competitive bidding, and there would be multiple bidders at better terms for the city. Should the city pull it together and get a RFP program going, the request for proposals is the way normal or usual municipalities provide services or solicit bids for projects within the city. Do you know you can't build a ball field fence over a Fabian's Park without an RFP? But we're going to give away a piece of property without that documentation. So I think we need to go back and look at the process of how we solicit and work with folks that are in the area or would have interest in a site such as Conagra. One thing I wanted to bring up, and I was at the economic development meeting the other day, I looked at the board that was there, that was as shocked as anyone that they received this proposal and were asked to endorse this without reading the documentation. It's about a 19-page, light reading document. But the folks that were on that committee were really never brought to the attention of what really was going on. And so I wanted to take a look at the board that as they sit, and they serve at the pleasure of council, but we have an economic development board, there's a lot of talent there. But the fact that this property resides in the Port of Huron, there's what's called a Huron Joint Port Authority. Tom Solberg's on that, Gordy Hawn's on that, Bob Barnes, Rob Moore, and Joe. I talked to a couple guys here on the Port Authority board. The fact that this is Port Authority property, they were never brought into the discussion. And when you have a guy like Rob Moore, who's corporate counsel for Firelands Regional Medical Center, this guy knows contract law. And when you get that kind of stuff and you have resources like the people on this page to draw from this community, use those tools. That's all council, not just Brad, not just city manager Andy over here. Everybody draw from those resources because they are there to serve for a purpose, for the betterment of what's going on here in Huron. So I was disappointed that members of the Port Authority were not involved in the Port of Huron project. So I'm not going to go into everything that I dug up here, but if anybody wants to dig up the 162-page Pizzuti Solutions Conagra report from December of 2008, again, another light reading document, but back there it states that the actual items that you really need to propose and put this property out there for public bidding, should anything be sold, is the fact that you need a request for proposals. That's just it. That goes back to 2008. Many of you were not on council at that time, but that's where everything starts. Forming that request for proposal so you know what you're selling and the buyer knows what they're buying. That's just the basics. So I don't want to take any more time, but thank you very much for your attention this evening.
Hi, I'm Bob Howell, 424 Kiwanis Avenue. I'm on the Planning Commission, but I'm here just as a citizen I appreciate you reading the letter, and I hope everybody takes that into consideration, especially being civil to each other. In that letter, in that email, I also said how much I support the city, the staff. I do. I think that they have the best interests of the city at heart. The process has been tough, and even though I don't agree with the complete process that's been happening, and I do agree with the comments that the fellows before have talked about. But the city has, I think, in their best efforts, tried to find a developer. That was tough to in the beginning because we didn't have a lot of numbers. We had a site that was troubled, and it's not an easy process. So I don't think they should be jumped on. I think we ought to just guide them in the way that we need to guide them to get to the right solution. I do want to. I presented this to City Council. You guys hopefully have seen my little study. Several months ago, 3-4 months ago, I was kind of fed up with the process. I thought it was going too slow. I went back after a planning commission meeting, scratched this out one night, and it's based on a place that I've been, maybe others have been. I think it's Broadway in Myrtle Beach. It is a development, if you've been there, it is a development that's based around just so you guys can see it. It is a development much like what we could do. It is larger, bigger scale. It's Myrtle Beach. That we don't have that kind of population. We don't have that yet. But it is a mixed-use development. So my thought was, I'm going to pass this around. I think you guys have all seen this, but I'm going to pass it around anyway. So it's a mixed-use development. That would be parking. This would be restaurants, shops, all of that meandering public through that. Condos up in this area, condos possibly here, maybe more condos here. The property, the railroad property that we hopefully will get at some point, that we should get. But that is, I presented this to planning, and everybody on planning liked the concept and hoped that we could have some mix of what Liberty has come up with and this kind of concept, that we could draw more public to Huron. It can be a dynamic place that everybody wants to go to a restaurant on the water. There's maybe 2 or 3 around, but we could have that. We could have that, shops and everything else. We would have to obviously find a developer, sell that kind of concept, but it would be a mix between what Liberty has done and that. That's full on commercial retail and condo, but that's a concept that I think the city maybe should go after, rather than saying, okay, we'll just take what we can get. If that whole thing turns into condos, what does that get? That gets some upper middle class people, and that's it. We don't have the general public can't use the land, and I don't think that's correct. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. There's a 3-minute time.
Okay. My name is Gloria Suter, 811 Bogart Road. My parents bought a house in Huron over 30 years ago and will actually have it paid off next year. They've invested a lot of money into their home while raising 5 kids along with their friends. I've loved living in Huron, and I couldn't be more grateful for this little town. I love my house especially. The house that they bought, with a highway right next to them and train tracks not more than a mile away. But they bought it anyway, since it didn't bother them that much. I mean, the highway and train tracks were there before they were. So if you try to use that as an argument, you'll have to think of something else. Something that was not there before they were is Moochie Farms, a $100 million facility that no Huronite had any say in whatsoever. Well, besides the city council, of course. When Moochie announced that they were building their facility in Huron, I really didn't see a problem with it at first. Everyone was so up in arms about the marijuana facility, also another building that no Huronite had any say in, that I don't think anyone really worried about Moochie. It was going to bring so much revenue into Huron, giving good paying jobs to us, and a lot of other crap that obviously isn't true. Really, the only thing that Moochie gave us is light trespassing. For those of you who don't know what light trespassing is, it's the poor control of lighting that crosses property lines and affects the property's values and our quality of life. Not only is this affecting our quality of life, but our animals and environment. All animals, whether they be pets or wildlife, are affected. Animals get confused as to why they are seeing light during the night. A very good theory as to why we have not seen our bald eagle that used to live in the tree in our backyard. And no, it did not migrate, since eagles who live in Ohio near Lake Erie are usually very territorial. These animals were here first and deserve to be treated better. And no, I'm not just calling out Moochie either. We all are destroying their homes, and there's no justification for anyone about that. But the light is not just affecting our wildlife, but children as well. I have heard from numerous parents that their children wake up during the night and will start getting ready for school because they're confused. A lot of people have come back with the counter argument to just install light canceling shades. You know, that's just a genius idea that I've never heard of. My friend just installed his for a little over $600. Everyone has $600 laying around. That's pocket money anyway. And if you couldn't tell, that was sarcasm. Maybe Huronites will be able to afford those lights, or those shades, once Moochie gives us those $18 an hour jobs that everyone was so excited about. Wait, that didn't happen either. Shocker. I am just amazed at all the research that was done and distributed by us. By the way, who did the research? I would just love to know. Or did you guys do any research at all? Did you just see a money sign and thought, good enough for me? Well, congrats, because you ruined Huron and you pissed a lot of people off. But that's okay. You taught me a very valuable lesson at a very young age. Would you like to know what that lesson is? Well, I don't care what you think, and I'm going to tell you anyway. The same way you decided you were going to do business without caring what I thought. So here's the lesson I learned. When I move, I'm going to pick a wonderful and beautiful little town, just like Huron used to be. I'll start a family and have a few pets and a wonderful yard, but most importantly, I'm going to pick a town with a city council who actually looks out for their people and not their own greedy interests. So no, I don't want to hear you say, you're sorry, or we're going to fix this and make it better. It's too late. It's too late for a lot of things, but I hope you learn not to make the same mistake again. Remember, you work for us, not the other way around.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Cup. I live at 2401 Bogart Road, and I have a few questions. I'd like to know, where is the environmental impact report?
This is kind of like you talked to us to do it, but I can tell you
Okay.
there is not one.
There isn't one. Okay, so you didn't do one even though there's one required by law.
None that I am aware of.
Okay, so there's no environmental impact report. Good to know. All right, because Moochie has also been contacting, our family still owns and operates farmland that abuts their property. They have reached out to farmers asking them to not use the pesticides or fertilizers that they need to maintain their crops because it might damage their crops. I don't know if anybody's aware of that, but they do, which is ridiculous to ask farming families who have farmed here for hundreds of years to stop their practices and impact their income because of their income. So there's that too. I'd also like to know what's going to happen with our property values. My husband and I worked for years to build our one and only forever home 4 years ago, in less than a mile away from where this plant is now. And now our property values are declining. And for what? For what? And how are we going to be compensated for that? Like, I'm about to give birth. I have a 6-year-old at home. We wanted to live there for the rest of our lives. And now what? And for what? I also want to know why there was no notice given. My aunt, who lives right next to us, and we live, again, with less than a mile away from this place, had to have a driveway variance done, okay? Because some farm machinery needed to come down her driveway. Every resident in the township received notification that if they wanted to attend a meeting and express their concerns about a driveway variance, they could. We received, I don't know who in the township received any notification about Moochie coming. Anybody?
Nothing.
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 Nothing. Not a thing. We received no notification about it. And yet, when somebody wants to do any kind of variance on something, residents get a notification. Why weren't we? And I'd like to ask why, in September of 2016, I'm referencing this Dusty Register, Mr. White, that if negotiations occurred for at least a year, why didn't the public know about that? White, leading negotiations, this is from the Register, 2016. leading negotiations with Muji representatives since day one, feared divulging details until earlier this month could spoil the deal. He provided explanation. There were so many moving parts to this type of complicated and comprehensive economic development deal. Anytime you deal with a large transfer of real estate, especially involving property owned by the state, it needs to be kept confidential. Once it was determined that the sale was possible earlier this summer, we could go forward on this. So again, right there, it was kept confidential. In 2016, none of the residents of Huron Township were notified about it. And I want to know why. We had no say in whether or not this came. The township just had a meeting about turning Keys Golf into an RV facility. The public was allowed to attend. They were given notice. They were told that this could be coming to their community, and they voiced their opinions. I never once was given a chance to voice my opinion about Muji coming to my backyard.
If I could just.
Hi, Brad. City Council. My name's Scott Slushman. I live on Rye Beach Road, right down from Tomatoes. First thing I want to say is, you said at 11 o'clock at night, no light from 11 till 7. That's unacceptable. First thing, that's not going to happen. When the sun goes down, the sun goes down. Moochies don't stay on. I built my house 3 years ago. And also what she just said about nobody knowing about this deal that was going down, I never would have built my house there, okay? I spent a lot of money for windows. I have nice windows on the back of my house. This morning at 3:45, I got up, and it looked like it was daylight outside. My dog was barking at squirrels in the yard. I got a little chihuahua. She chases them all the time. It was 3:45 in the morning. Are you kidding me? 11 o'clock ain't gonna happen. When the sun goes down, the sun goes down. Because I tell you what, this summer, if I want to be out at a camp, have a fire, or enjoy my evening outside, I don't want to have to deal with that. I mean, I live less than a quarter of a mile away. I'm not the only one this is affecting, but I got a question for you also. Where did the money come from to build that substation? Where did the money come from to buy that property? My uncle farmed that property for I don't know how many years, but I want to know where that money came from to buy that property from the Toledo Catholic Diocese. Is that correct? Where did that money come from, and where did the money come from to build that substation? I'm just curious. I'm sure everybody else would like to know.
We appropriated the money for the purchase.
Did anybody know that? Did anybody have a vote on that, or did anybody even say anything that you took? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yeah, I understand. And we can talk about the. But the vote on something like that would be handled up here when we talk about it.
Well, that was, I don't know if that was ever made public or not.
Yeah, it was in the legislation.
Okay, now my next question is, we're talking about phase 2 and 3 with Moochies. Now, I've heard a few of you say that we don't have to let them go forward and put phase 2 and 3 in. Now, if we don't do that, how are we gonna recoup the money that you spent on the substation and buying that property? I don't know, how much was that property, Andy? Do you remember?
$60,000.
How much was it for the substation?
3.2.
Okay, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. We currently, here in Public Power, we currently make enough on everything we sell now to cover the note.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me ask you then.
That is covered, yes.
Let me ask you this then. Why was the substation put in? I know it's a dumb question. Everybody's thinking that right now, but I want to hear it.
Because they're such a large user, we have.
Moochies are.
Moochies,
Okay.
yes, sir. Yes.
Why does everything in our town evolve around Moochie? I mean, thank you for your time. I don't have anything else to say. I mean, I'm sure I'm on record from, when was it?
27th.
December 27th, yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right.
Sean Bickley, 128 Richland Avenue. Yes, I still have lived here most of my life. I know you guys have the third reading this evening on the bed tax, on another 7% And I spoke at the second meeting, and there's people here to talk about that, but Moochie Farms is the top dog tonight. I'm going to ask you guys to rethink that position again. It's a lot of money. I think it's unfair. I've talked with Talked with George Sotino multiple times these past few weeks, and Carlos and John Esposito, and men and members of our community that have hundreds and hundreds, and Greg Hill, hundreds and hundreds of rooms. And this started off at 1%, and then our 7%. And those who don't know in the audience, it's 3% to Huron in the general fund, and it's 4% to Erie County. It's an end-use tax. However, nobody on the board is a hotel, motel, resort operator. No one owns any of these Airbnbs and VBROs. And so 7% is a lot of money. And welcome to Huron, my friends, right? Let's welcome you to Erie County and jam it up you by penalizing you to come here. We've all heard the ridiculous stories of the water tower. We had bids for $60,000 to paint it white. But because the bed tax has so much money, and they keep increasing their employees and full benefits and pensions and cars and trucks, places to go, we paint the water tower, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys know the number, for $150,000 because it says Erie Shores and Islands on it. This bed tax has so much money. We spent $250,000 for those concrete pads on 250 to say Erie Shores and Islands, and we had Barnes come in and plant a couple trees. This money's going into the general fund. I think I would take it much easier if you guys said, Mr. Bickley, we will gladly take your money, but we're going to move it into our fund of Huron, and we're going to advertise for you, and the money that you make here for our community is going to go into this fund, and we're going to take every cent of it and put it back into advertising and directional signs and a website that directs these people here. Damn it, be Huron proud. Quit taking money from us. Seriously, every time I turn around, we're taking. We're always taking. And I'm tired of taking. And I work hard here, and I invest a lot of money here, and in our community, and in our neighboring community. Quit stealing.
Sandy Legando, Cleveland Road West. I'm not here to address Moochie Farms or any of the other topics that people are addressing tonight. I'm here to address Trey Hardy's comments after the last meeting, where he told the audience that he's disgusted with the lack of respect from the citizens, people who are accusing of underhanded goings-on behind the scenes. So I approached him after the meeting because it was my husband who was the speaker at his employment that day who spoke about respect for your constituents and leadership. And what I told him I have heard about Mr. Genesi, it would be nice if you would wake up and listen.
I'm not asleep here.
Because you can encourage to do this.
I'm listening.
We're all watching you sleep. This is the biggest example of a lack of leadership and a lack of respect for your community, right there. Unbelievable. So I told Mr. Hardy, you know, your Tuesday night council meetings public speaking part has become your Wednesday morning comedy hour. All of you people who come up here and speak from the heart and try to say how you feel about your community, Mr. White, Mr. Hartung, and the rest of our council has decided to make that their comedy hour. They mock us, they mimic us, they laugh at us, and I think we voted you in. Mr. Hardy, where's the leadership? And when I approached Mr. Hardy about this, do you know what his comment was? I won't deny it. The next day, I ran into Mr. White in the parking lot in the city. He approached me, and you know what he said? I want to apologize, because it does happen. But when I come in from a meeting, people say to me, boy, you really got your ass kicked last night, didn't you, Andy? He said, so you know what, I'm just mad. I don't know what to do. You people are coming at me here and you're coming at me there. Well, you know what, Mr. White? You deserve it. You deserve it. And the rest of you who are sitting in the meetings and who are listening to this happen, where's your leadership? Where's your leadership to stand up and say, hey, you know what, guys? These people voted us in here to be their voice. They're paying us with their tax dollars. Who are we to sit up here and mimic them and mock them and laugh at them? Is that leadership? Do you truly believe that's leadership?
I don't agree with what you're painting as the context, first point.
Well, you did in the parking lot there last.
No,
yeah,
I did
right.
not. I said I'm a human being, and if you get beat down and called names at a public meeting, I will say to this, everyone
No,
in the
I'm
room,
not done talking.
respect,
This is my
I'm
time.
sorry, but
No,
respect
this
is a
is my
two-way
time.
street.
It is a two-way street.
You get what you give out.
And I respect, and I have come up here and spoke very respectfully, and so have all these other people.
No.
They've respected you. I have never heard somebody call you a name at this podium in one of these meetings.
Well, did you come and listen to the audio?
Well, I've been here. I've never heard anybody call you a name. People are accusing you of underhanded doings because you heard what these people spoke about. These people never even heard about Moochie Farms coming and they live across the street from it. There was never anything done about it. You got slammed about the marijuana facility. You know what? I don't care if there's a medical marijuana facility. I don't care if medical marijuana is legal. I don't care if recreational marijuana is legal. But you guys had to go behind everybody's back and do everything where we don't know until it's too late. Moochie's here to stay. These poor people are doomed. Moochie is here to stay, and it's only 1/3 of the way done. So let's talk leadership, and let's see if any of you can step up and be a leader and say, hey, you know what? These people have a right to speak their mind. Nobody has a right to call you a name. Nobody has a right to stand up here and swear at you. Nor do you have the right behind our backs to mimic, mock, make fun of, and laugh at any of us. Because we're who pay you, we elected you. It's about time you guys start doing your jobs. And Mr. Genesi, wake up.